Hey, welcome into the Tuesday edition. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robbie Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you. Hope everybody's off to a wonderful start here today. Joe Rexrode, good morning. How are you doing?
Doing all right. Got pretty good rest. Just couldn't really justify the later bedtime for Bengals Cowboys, but I see the Bengals won.
Good for them. I watched 0 seconds of that game. Not one. And I feel just fine about that decision.
Well, that's fine. I watched the first half, and I don't really feel like my life was enriched by it.
I'm sure Jerry Jones continues to have a wonderful time down there. Season going really well for them.
The sun was not an issue.
Sun was not an issue.
Not getting anybody's eyes.
So some improvement there last night. That's good.
Win-win.
That's good. Keyser, how we doing? What's going on?
Good morning, gentlemen. Glad to be here with you.
We're glad to have you, Nick.
Nothing else to add.
Thank you,
Nick.
Nick.
No notes.
Just glad to be here, yeah.
Nick, we're glad to have you. Thank you so much. We got a lot to get to on the program today. Take your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com, 615-737-1025. Alex Doherty from the Tennessean will be with us at 8 o'clock. We're going to be talking about a lot of coaches today, Joe. Both Brian Callahan, Andrew Burnett asked about their job status yesterday. So we're going to get into that today. Alex also caught up with Sean Henry, who kind of spoke on behalf of Bill Haslam ownership for the Predators on the Andrew Burnett stuff and Barry Trotz's situation as well. So we'll get into that a little bit more with Alex at 8 o'clock. In the meantime, taking your thoughts, 615-737-1025. So we begin on the Titans. Brian Callahan having his weekly Monday press conference yesterday, breaking down the aftermath of the 10-6 loss to Jacksonville. A lot of things came up in that press conference, but one thing that did come up, that when you're 3-10 in the NFL, usually comes up at some point with the head coach, is his job status. He was asked pretty quickly into the press conference yesterday about his future and whether or not he believes there will be one for him. Here's what Brian Callahan had to say.
You feel certain there is a future?
Oh, what do you mean?
For you?
Oh, yeah, I don't worry about that stuff. That's not for me to worry about. I do everything every day to do my job the best way I possibly can. I put everything into this as much as there's nobody that thinks about how to build this program and what we need to do more than I do. And so, yeah, I don't worry myself with anything other than that at this point. And again, there's things that I can't control. And so I don't focus on that. I focus on what it's going to take to build a program that and build the foundation to a program that's going to allow us to have success in the future. That's my only focus. It's the only thing I think about.
So that was Brian Callahan yesterday in response to PK's question there. What do you mean? For you, is there a future? What did you make of his response there, Joe?
Will you see tomorrow's sunshine? Are you sure? My goodness. You just never know how PK might dance around an issue. Yeah, well, I think that was a pretty good, I think, response by Brian Callahan, because it is kind of it's kind of abrupt. You probably at this point, both of these coaches, especially Brunette, and we're going to talk about both of them, but they obviously know the questions are coming. The questions have to come.
Oh, yeah.
Right. But usually, like, it'll be a little bit like you can brace yourself a little bit up there for and that was sort of like, wait, what? Oh, you're saying, is there a future for me? Okay. But I thought the answer was fine. It is out of his control. I mean, well, I guess it's out of his control how Amy thinks.
Yeah, for sure.
There is control here, and a need to demonstrate control and competence and all that stuff in the last month here, I think, to help himself. But I thought he handled it pretty well.
I thought he handled it pretty well, but I mean, it kind of got peppered a little bit yesterday with some of these questions. He was, asked about, PK later in the press conference, which we'll have to get to at some point this week. Ask him about basically if he's got a problem with being like the only front-facing person of the organization since Carthon and Amy Abstrunk won't speak. I thought he handled that question pretty well as well. But he was also asked by Nick Suss if he feels like he's coaching for his job as they sit here at 3-10 with a month remaining in the season, and who knows where things go after this from an organizational standpoint. Here's what Brian Callahan had to say to that question.
This time of year, we hear coaches all the time say, I'm coaching for my job every week. Is that your attitude? Is that productive to you, or is that something that you don't think?
I don't think about that part of it. I wouldn't say I'm coaching for my job. I'm trying to do the very best I can at every possible moment of the week, of the day, to put ourselves in position to be a successful football team and to win football games. The rest of it's sort of not outside of that. I don't control any of that. I just work as hard as I possibly can. I pour everything into this that I have, and do the very best that I can possibly do on a day-to-day basis. And that's all I really think about. And those things that come up, that a lot of that's outside, and I don't really have much control over that either way. So I just try to do the best I can every day.
So that's Callahan on the coaching for your job front. Look, I thought he handled the press conference pretty well yesterday. I thought, when you're 3-10 and you lose to Jacksonville, you know that tough questions are coming. He even opened his press conference yesterday before a question was asked and started talking about his, a lot of positives to take out of the game comments that he made after the game Sunday, and kind of detailed what he was talking about there. Now, I think you still, if you're a fan and you hear that and you're like, well, that's great, you lost 10-6 to Jacksonville, who cares? I understand that. And he kind of brought that up. He was like, I realized that kind of falls on deaf ears after a 10-6 loss, but he even kind of started things off that way. I thought, Brian Callahan handled those questions well, and those questions, if they continue losing, aren't going anywhere anytime soon.
Yeah. No, look, I think he addressed that well. Yeah, there hasn't been much, with him in terms of press conference stuff that's an issue. It's probably, if anything, it's helped him, pretty consistently. The football hasn't, but the front-facing part of the job, he's been really good. So, and I think it was appropriate to address that. The positives say, it's, look, you can go through any coach, go through the history of the coaches here. Vrabel at times after losses said some stuff that was like, sometimes interesting, sometimes what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Callahan sort of, obviously he leans positive on stuff, right? And again, that may, sometimes maybe that's not what you need. And in that moment, that was not something you wanted to bring up. But then to address that, to handle these questions the way he did, from the press conference perspective, he's just about as good as you can ask for.
Well, then the real question is he actually coaching for his job? He said all the right things, right? Like, I think the way that he's approaching
That's how you got to do it
is how you do it. And that's how you just got to put your head down and coach. Like, I think he gets that. So that's good. And then the real question is, so what does it mean? Like, is he coaching for his job? Is there any appetite whatsoever to making wholesale changes if you're Amy Adams-Strunk after this year? Is she committed, no matter what, the way the rest of this season goes, to bringing this whole group back next year and trying again? Like, that's what we don't know heading into all this. So in the meantime, I think he's approaching it the right way. But I think, maybe in some ways he's just like the rest of us and doesn't really know what's going to happen at the end of the year.
Yeah. He definitely doesn't know, right? He doesn't know. You have to feel, if you're him, you have to be a little bit like privately, like, really? We're talking about firing me? Really?
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah. In my first year. But you have to be realistic about the league. Nathaniel Hackett had the year. Now, his year in Denver was like almost fireable from the start with some of the stuff he was doing in games.
I think you legitimately said to fire him after his first game.
No, it's honestly the worst time management I've ever seen by a football coach.
It's bad.
And that Monday night loss, I was like, you can't. This guy can't coach.
Yeah.
Again, the clock is the one thing that we can all sit there and, we don't know a fraction of the information on any play call, on any of these things. But the clock, like, we can all see that.
Yes.
But regardless, that was a special situation. But still, if you're him, like, you understand that. You also, if you're him, you've lived through. This is Bengals week, so you've lived through 1-15, right? Was it 1-15?
I believe so. Yeah.
I'd be interested to know what the conversation was in Cincinnati around that. To me, it was kind of expected, though, right? That's the difference. Is like, I don't know that everybody in preseason the preseason, there's always way too much optimism everywhere. So I don't know if like in Cincinnati that year is like, well, this team, man, I don't know, they might be able to go 8-8. Yeah, I don't know. But I mean, like
4-12
around the league, like 1-15 was not shocking for that team. Now this, like if this team goes 3-14, that's certainly, I mean, it's not at all. When you go back through all the things, all the conversation, I think we've overstayed a little bit the optimism that they were not making any declarations, but they certainly were not setting people up for 3-14.
No, I mean they did say they checked every box with the roster that they had and got all their first choices with coaches. So.
That is true. So those are 2 Rand Carthons. So I mean, Peak, when I ask about why Callahan's the only one who talks, I mean, there's some examples for you.
There are some examples. 615-737-1025, our phone number. 615-737-1025. We'll continue the discussion on Brian Callahan, who was also asked about the Amy Adams Strunk new stadium part of this. I thought his answers to that was pretty interesting yesterday at this press conference as well. We'll get more into that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines. Driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com.
Glad I could entertain you like that during the break.
Rexrode Comedy Hour. It's good stuff. Have to check it out. Taking your thoughts on the Titans. Let's head back to our 102.5 The Game phone line. Welcome in Dave in Mount Juliet. Dave, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, good morning, guys. So I have always been a fan of Brian Callahan. I had high expectations of him, and I believe everyone in the front office needs to be fired, without a doubt. They've done nothing but tear this team down. However, as the weeks go by, I'm becoming more and more convinced that Callahan just, although he was a good offensive coordinator, I just do not think he's a good head coach. This team, in general, is just undisciplined all the way around, and we should have seen it in training camp when he just would allow the fighting with not even a slap on the hand. I mean, that kind of thing just sets the tone. The mistakes constantly, the penalties, the wrong routes that are ran, the missed assignments, the poor coaching, all around. I just think Callahan this is not his wheelhouse.
Yep.
I just want to hear what you guys think.
Thanks for the call, Dave. Appreciate it. Your thoughts on what Dave had to say there, Joe?
Look, I think everything he said is fair. I don't know that I would draw the same conclusion at this point, but I think that that's a fair thing to bring up. That we talked about at the time. Should he have been a little tougher on like Jeff Simmons with some of the fighting, and then you also had this, whatever the heck, Oh, I'll sign your autographs, but hold on, let me throw Andrew across the field first. Give me a minute. Some of that stuff. That's fair. It's kind of like when he came in, it's funny because there was so much discussion about this is the new kind of coach, right? Yeah. Like this is what works now. It doesn't work now to be, the Belichickian, dictator coach, and it's more about collaboration on stuff. And the thing is, again, right now everybody's like, "Oh, I miss that discipline, need that very well." But you can look around the league and you can find coaches who do it about like this, and it's going well. Why? Probably because they have a lot better players. Now, maybe because they're better coaches too, and that's so I don't know, but I do think that whenever you're losing, again, it's so funny that we have this going on right now, a year after the Vrabel stuff, because whenever you're losing, your traits are bad.
Yeah.
So a lot of the stuff that Vrabel did, all of a sudden was like, oh, he won't smile at Levis, or whatever. He won't say anything good. He's too much of a glowering jerk.
Vrabel's a jerk in the press conference.
Right.
When he was winning, it was, look at Vrabel.
Exactly.
Showing those media bums.
Yeah. Suck it, PK. Yeah, stick it to him. Right. So So I'm always, it's kind of like the thing we talk about all the time, which is whenever someone gets fired or leaves, right, then it was always like whatever was bad had to be all on them. And now the new person's way better. And all these things about the new person are way better. So all of which is to say, look, I think everything that he said there, like it's a fair things to bring up. And it hasn't been good football. With both of these coaches, because I know we're going to talk about both of them today. I sit here today, I'm not sure that they aren't both going to end up being really good coaches in both leagues, and I'm not sure that someday Titans and Preds fans aren't going to be sitting here like they see all these other players go elsewhere. Oh, Philip Tomasino, what a play! And seeing all these things playing out that they're not going to sit here and watch both of them somewhere else do really well. It's so early with such a bad roster that I think you just have to always keep that in mind.
I thought another really interesting moment yesterday in the press conference with Brian Callahan. So John Glennon, as we all know, I mean, you're looking down the pipeline here. If you're the Titans into the future, the new stadium's coming. We've talked for the last year about how, hey, when that new stadium opens, you want to be pretty good. Like you want to have a team that's worth coming to watch in that new stadium. And like the buzz and the hype for that kind of starts now. Like you got to start selling your spots if you're the Titans, if you're Amy Adams-Strunk. And how does that affect the decisions that this organization makes as they move forward? And John Glennon basically asked Brian Callahan about that and how that relates to him at the press conference yesterday. Here's what Brian Callahan had to say.
probably similar theme, I guess, but I guess when you talk with Amy, do you ever get a sense of kind of the situation that the organization is in? New stadium coming up in a couple of years, trying to generate buzz, excitement, etc.
Sure.
And might that impact things as well?
Again, not something I have any control over. I
just wonder if you.
Yeah, no, those are things that I'm not naive, and I don't like stick my head in the sand. I understand how all of it works, but that's not anything I focus on. That to me, that's 3 years in this league feels like 50. So those are things that I don't even worry about. I focus on today and tomorrow and how we can best game plan for the Bengals, and that's all I look at, and anything other than that really is for everybody else to look at.
So 3 years in this league feels like 50. I thought an interesting line there. He's absolutely right.
I bet you this one feels like about 75 on its own.
I bet it does. I bet it does. But look, we've had people bring this up for the last couple of weeks, but a lot of people brought it up yesterday too on our text line of, well, the new stadium is coming, and if it becomes clear to Amy Adams Strunk that this current setup's not going to work by the time that thing opens, do you go ahead and make a change and try to establish yourself with whatever the new regime would be by the time the stadium comes here? Like, do you go ahead and do you have that in mind already if you're Amy Adams Strunk and the Titans? And like, I thought Glennon's question at least similarly down that path. What do you make of that idea if you're Amy Adams Strunk looking at this right now?
Yeah, you're trying to sell it now, and you're bad. It's a bad, embarrassing season of football. So you don't want that anymore. So, okay, well, if you fire everybody, there are definitely some people who are going to be happy, right? Yay! Look, there were some people, by the way, when Vrabel got fired, yay! Yeah. And when John Robinson got fired in season, yes! Okay. So some people will be happy. I still would argue that more people who are Titans fans would then be like, and you can be both things, can be like, okay, good, they had to go, but also, how the hell are we going to trust this owner to get anything right? How could you possibly think this owner is going to get anything right?
Yeah.
If you give up on all this like that, and that's been my argument. Again, my argument is just that, it's early, well, especially with Callahan, right? So to me, if you're talking about from the stadium perspective, you're just trying to be as good as you can possibly be, as quickly as you can possibly be. How do you get there? It might be by firing everybody and bringing in whoever.
Yeah.
And, you do have a high pick coming. If you don't trust these guys to make a high pick, well, then fire them. But either way, I think you do have to think a little bit short term of the 2025 season. You cannot have another bad, embarrassing, losing season if you can help it.
Yes, and then what's your best path to get in there? Because I'm with you. If she fires Carthon, Brinker, Callahan, certainly if she does all three at the end of this year, one of the things we're going to be talking about the next day is, okay, so she's just firing people all the time. Like, she's firing people all the time the last 3 years. How in the world do you have any confidence that that's going to change moving forward? That's one of the things we're going to talk about.
What did she do when she hired him?
Exactly. I mean, exactly. Now, having said that, if the next regime she hires goes out there and wins next year, then people aren't going to care. Like, they're going to – that's how you get people back invested into getting excited about the new stadium, is to find a way to put a winning product on the field. I mean, do I have confidence sitting here on December the 10th that that's going to happen next year? No, I don't. But I'm just saying, like, for all her faults and everything that's gone poorly, like, if you stumble your way into either sticking with this group and they start to win next year, or making a change and you see drastic improvement next year, that's how you get people reinvested into the stadium. At the end of the day, it all comes down to, are you winning or are you losing?
Exactly. So again, so I mean, the firing stuff is, it really is just, it's, I mean, it's kind of separate from that, right? Like, I mean, the roster itself, whoever is in charge, it's in the state it's in. These are your players on a contract. Yeah. So
which Callahan brought up several times yesterday. A lot of these guys coming back next year. I mean, the majority of this roster will be back next year.
Yeah. So obviously quarterback that's where you start, I mean, if you're her, it's beyond the decision wherever she is on the decisions with the jobs of these people, it's like, okay, so is there any way for us to have a good quarterback next year?
Yeah.
Have good quarterback play? Because if not, how are we going to win? Right?
Right.
Can Will be that guy? Can Will win? Can Will be a winning quarterback in the league? Or is there a rookie who can be a winning quarterback in the league? Or is there a veteran? You know, again, I don't think they have to go 10-7 next year. They're screwed, but you gotta at least be a middling team and have some kind of a hope next year. I think that's pretty urgent.
I mean, really, your path is that, and I'm talking purely just in terms of getting people around here excited again. Your path is that, and slowly building your way back up, or I guess it's just being absolute cheeks again next year and hoping that
Arch,
the Arch Nico combo comes in here and just starts revving it up.
Death March for Arch. We haven't really gotten to come up with a good Arch one. What was the lava?
Stepping on lava for Nico Iamaleava.
Yeah, drowning in lava for Iamaleava.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Good stuff.
I'm going to read Ben here real quick from Cumberland City. It says, hiring Callahan was a knee-jerk hire by an owner that needs to let her GM be accountable run the team. Brian Callahan didn't call plays in Cincinnati. And also, Vrabel didn't get the money to spend. This administration did. I mean, the Titans spent money when Vrabel was here. Obviously, this particular offseason, they had a lot of cap space because the cap is part of the equation and does count and is real. But, the knee-jerk hire thing, I mean, the knee-jerk reaction, I think, was the Vrabel firing. The hiring of Callahan, I mean, Callahan was absolutely one of the top guys in the cycle.
Yeah.
He, like the player survey, you can say whatever you want about the player survey. I know you can pair that with discipline and say, well, see, that's not – it's pretty good to have a player survey rating like he got from players at Cincinnati. So this was – I mean, Callahan was going to get a job, I think, last cycle or at some point. Like this, he was not some left field hire here.
No. And look, again, how much blame goes on him this year? That's part of this whole thing too. I don't know. I don't know what the true answer to that is. He's not blameless. I know that. I mean, you're 3-10, and it'd be hard pressed for me to sit up here and say that he's done anywhere close to a good job this season. And does that doom him immediately from being a good coach in this league? Or with everything else going on around this team right now, including quarterback play, the roster, some of the decisions that were made in the offseason, how much does that factor into his performance as a coach, as what we've seen so far? That's what you have to determine if you're Amy Adams Strunk. We'll continue this conversation coming up next. Got some more of your thoughts to get to on the Brian Callahan front. Andrew Burnett also asked about his job status yesterday. Sign of the times around here. We'll get into that coming up as well. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Taking your thoughts on the Titans and the Preds. 615-737-1025. Our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We're live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. A couple more of your thoughts to get to on the Brian Callahan front before we get to some comments from Andrew Burnett yesterday. By the way, going to be spending a lot of time on this throughout the show today. So, sign of the time.
We've got time, folks.
We got a lot of times to weigh in here. One texter says, I'm not excusing all the special teams woes, but we talk about this team as if we have a competitive roster already put together. Andy Reid could be our coach, and we would still have a losing record. This from an unnamed texter on the text line. I get the sentiment there. I do. Now, I will say this. You know, we're talking about the roster right now. I think we certainly said this. I think most people agreed with this, and most people talked about it heading into the year. Did we not think this roster was in a better spot heading into this year than it was at what closed out this team last year? Like, didn't we talk about that? The moves that were made.
Sure.
Now, granted, some of this is seeing the way it's played out, right? Like, you know, Steve can't get on the field. So that's obviously a huge problem. Owuzie get back on the field this week and made an interception. But, I mean, we've barely seen him all year. Ridley for, I don't know, 5 games this year, it was not clicking with Calvin Ridley. And then all of a sudden it was. And then last week he ran out of bounds for no reason. So there was that too. So you got to get to the bottom of that. But the point is, some of the moves they made in the offseason that we felt pretty good about heading into the year have not panned out that way. You know, right tackle. You know, we talk a lot about right tackle. Did I expect Nicholas Petit-Frere to be an all-pro at the position this year? No. Did I expect him to be the turnstile that you walk into Bridgestone Arena through like he's been so far this year at right tackle? No, I didn't expect that either. So a lot of this is the roster looks one way heading into the year, and then you see the way it shakes out, and it's like, okay, well, this didn't work out quite how I thought it would.
Yeah, no question. And so then even with that, it's, again, offensive line stuff. I mean, they went through the roster, they went through the film and all the information they had. So, I mean, if you want to take away blame from the coaches on the offensive line decisions of the front office, I wouldn't take it completely away, because that's all they talked about. The combine last year was Bill Callahan and you know, his system for evaluating linemen and all that stuff, not just requiring them, but also evaluating the ones they had. So, I mean, that they made a huge tactical error there, keeping him, which I'm with you. I thought he could be serviceable. He has not been. So the roster, but you're right. I mean, we definitely talked about the roster. Clearly, this roster is better. They actually have a receiver who can be a wide receiver 1 in the league. He has not been that. He has been better. The corner thing was right. This is going to be the most talented secondary they've ever had. This is the best corner group they've ever had. Who knows? Yeah. And the Snead thing is, when you talk about like the front office evaluation, I mean, that's, you know, when you gave up what you gave up for him. I mean, look, he has to be like if I'm Amy Adams Strunk, which is all these conversations we're having when it comes down to what she thinks,
it
right?
does.
Well, that's one of my big. Okay, so what is this injury? Is this an injury that, because of his knee problems, is worse, or it can be somewhat related? Is he going to be a great player next year? Because, damn, I paid him to be a great player for 4 years. And, yes, you can, you know, all these things you can basically get out after 2. But he's going to be a great player next year, right, Rand?
And why were you convinced that all this was going to happen and nobody else was?
Yeah, because, I mean, because with injury stuff, like, look, it's nobody's fault that Lloyd Cushenberry tore his Achilles.
No, sometimes things
just happens. But when you have a history like this, and then the market is kind of strangely quiet. Yeah, that's one that could really be costly.
Yep, no doubt about that. So, in other news, we go from one coach talking about his job status to another in this city. Andrew Burnett, after practice yesterday at Centennial Sportsplex, was asked about his job status coming off an 0-4 road trip. The Predators have lost 7 in a row. They're 0-4-3 their last 7. They're 7-15-6 overall. They're taking on Calgary tonight. Brunette asked about his job status after practice yesterday. Here's what he had to say.
Andrew, anytime a team is losing, questions about job security come up. Is that something that you're concerned about right now?
I think in our business we're terminal, in my business anyways, and it's just like all of us in life. I don't think we overly concerned about it. When it happens, it happens. In saying that, it is what it is. I'm looking forward to tomorrow's game. I think something's bound to break, and hopefully it breaks tomorrow.
If you talk to Barry, but you talk to Barry a lot, right? I'm sure.
Yeah.
Things like that. Does that come up or?
Things like what? My job?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure it comes up every day. I don't really spend a whole lot of time. I just worried about the present. I'm worried about doing the best job I can do. I'm worried about helping this team, and I feel, there's certain nights that we left some things on the board. It could be a totally different story sitting here talking to you today, but we are where we're at, and all we can do is focus on tomorrow.
So that was Andrew Brunette. A couple takeaways, Joe. He knew the question was coming. You had to know at some point in that press conference yesterday that question was coming. So I feel like he was ready for it. He talked about, this business, particularly in that sport, terminal. It's very difficult to put together a long coaching tenure at one place, really in any sport, but certainly the National Hockey League. He answered it about how I thought he would when he was asked about it. He's still a coach at the moment. I know some Predators fans were curious yesterday if yesterday was going to be the day. If, you come off the road trip, you don't win a game, goal scoring has been just brutal for them lately. They've not been able to put the puck in the back of the net. They're the worst offensive team in the league. And you don't win a game on the Canadian road trip. You got a couple days off before you play again tonight. People wondering if yesterday was going to be the day. And the answer was no. He was out there coaching practice yesterday. Your thoughts on what Andrew Brunette had to say?
Yeah. He knew it. It's worth watching the video there too. Pretty uncomfortable, but I guess how many people are going to be like, hey, thanks for the question.
Yeah,
let me tell you about
appreciate
my
that.
job. I might get fired. I might not. We'll see. He's clearly, feeling it. And of course, right?
Yeah.
How could you not be? I thought the last thing there of the, a couple things left out there could be having a totally different conversation. It's like, boy, there'd be a lot of things that would have to be a lot different and a lot of nights for us to be talking. Granted, it doesn't have to be this bad, I guess, right? Yeah. Like even just 2 or 3 results, maybe at least we're not talking job as much as we are right now, but they're just pretty freaking far from anything but terrible right now.
Yeah, the offense is brutal. Now, he pointed out a couple times yesterday that, by the metrics, they're spending a lot of time in the offensive zone, which is true. They are. They're spending a lot of time in the offensive zone, that their quality in terms of the chances that they're generating at times starting to go up as of late, which is also true. If you look at the numbers, it's not resulting in offense right now. So I guess you can view that one of two ways. It's positive that you're building there a little bit in terms of the generate. I think against Montreal, they had like 80 attempts. Like they had a lot of attempts on the net. So to his point yesterday, he said, when you're putting 75, 80 attempts on net, you should probably expect a few more goals to go your way at some point, which generally speaking, I agree with. The problem is, and they've scored 2 goals or fewer in 19 of their 28 games. They've played 28 games, and 19 of them, it's been 2 or less. That's a pretty alarming statistic. And Yossi was asked about that and just kind of the offense of this yesterday, and he just talked. He's like, all you can do is just kind of put your head down. He said, if it's one game, it's easy to just say, all right, well, it just didn't go in for us. He said the challenge for them this year has been, it's been all the time where you feel like you've gotten some good looks or you're putting some attempts on net and it just ain't going. And how do you battle against frustration there? He said that's been a really hard thing for them to do this year, is to try to battle against that. And I guess the question is, for Andrew Brunette, for everybody in that locker room, is that going to change at any point? It's 28 games, and in 19 of them, you scored 2 or less. At some point, that just kind of is what you are, right?
It sure seems that way, which still makes no sense.
I know.
but then also, okay, so if you change the coach, all of a sudden are they scoring 3.5 a game?
See, that's the.
I mean, that does happen sometimes. Like not I'm not saying that specific stat, but it does happen sometimes that teams all of a sudden look totally different.
Yeah, I don't know.
It just doesn't make any sense to me.
It's wild. It's one thing to have. I've said this a lot. It's one thing to have the record, and it becomes a little bit more of just a glaring thing each day because, I mean, look, they've lost 7 in a row. They've got 7 wins in their first 28 games. I mean, the record is what it is. So that part of it is mystifying. If you would have told me that, I would have been stunned heading into the year. I think equally as stunning is how bad they are offensively. Like 32nd in the league, dead last. Like with the guys they have on their roster, it's just mind-boggling.
Right. With what they did last year. First team ever to add 2 40-goal scorers.
Yeah.
And then this. What?
Just nothing. We'll take your thoughts on Andrew Brunette's comment, 615-737-1025, our phone number, 615-737-1025. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, the game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025, our phone number. 615-737-1025. Andrew Burnett addressing his job status yesterday. And got to look at that and how it fits into the big picture of the Predators right now. Now, Andrew Burnett, I think, Joe, similarly to Brian Callahan, like there's really only one way you can approach it while you're in the job, right? Like you can't sit there and worried about getting fired. Like you got to put your head down and try to coach your way through it. And look, you know, I know people have been critical of Burnett and the lack of quote unquote adjustments and all that. Well, I can tell you this. They basically changed their entire power play yesterday in terms of the structure of how they're going to try to attack things tonight. Made a couple of tweaks 5-on-5. Whether or not those things are going to work, I have no idea. But he's trying. Like they were. That's what they did yesterday at practice. Was basically, I mean, the power play. It's got the same personnel. It's going to be totally different in terms of the way that they attack it. So interested to see what that looks like tonight against Calgary.
Stamkos at the point.
Yeah, Stamkos net front.
Yeah.
Don't worry, guys. I'll just start redirecting pucks left and right. But yeah, go ahead, Nick.
I was going to add, so with this, I noticed yesterday that, and I've seen a coaching clinic where Burnett has talked about the rotations, and I think that's what they're implementing now. It's going to be a lot of the guys filling in for one another. So the fans that are going to be going to the game tonight, or if you want to know in general, that's what they're going to be doing. It's going to be more of that rotation, more of the guys filling in for one another.
A lot of movement.
And they're going to utilize the back of the net, I think, a lot more often too. So they have the right guys to move the puck around, but that's what I wanted to add because that's what they were harping on a lot yesterday.
Yeah, it's basically about getting a little too stagnant out there and they're moving things around. So we'll see what that looks like tonight for them. Point is, like, whether you're Callahan or Burnett, like, you just got to do your job to try to coach your way out of this until when and if a decision is made. And one thing that's a question is, you know, Barry Trotz has been pretty adamant about his defense of Andrew Burnett when he's been on with Stillman. And I think he's going to be on with Stillman again tonight at 5 o'clock. So make sure we're tuned in for that. And the record is what it is. We've seen coaches already get fired throughout the league this year. Chicago just fired theirs last week. Do the Predators actually have an appetite to do this? I don't know. Like the fan base, a big portion of the fan base clearly wants this move to be made. We hear from them every day. Do the Predators actually have an appetite to do that? That's what the question is.
I mean, I feel like the Predators are going to go as far as they can go, like farther than most organizations would. But then again,
I totally agree.
I say that, but it's like, how many organizations are, with all that has happened, 1 year, one really good year, eventually a year that got, obviously it was rough and then it got a total heater. So you could spin that and say, yeah, they had a couple months, but other than that, has it been good?
Yeah, he's finalist for coach of the year.
Yeah, he's finalist for coach of the year. Overall, you have to look at last year and say that was pretty freaking good. They blew a game at home and they could have advanced in the playoffs. And then obviously this, like you said, it's 28 games of could not possibly imagine anything worse.
Yeah.
But man, this is an organization that has been as stable and not reactive as any, right? So I think I think the intent is to not do it, and then but I mean, I know it's sometimes it becomes like the only answer.
Yeah. Like sometimes you just don't have a choice.
So it's an interesting thing you said there, which is something we always talk about, right? But like a big portion of the fan base. Do you really think a big portion wants him fired?
I said, significant. Is it the majority? I don't know. Like, it's hard for me to divvy that up.
That loud, small.
But there's no doubt. I mean, look, I hear from him every day. I hear from him every day on Twitter. We hear from him every day on the show. Like, yeah, there's a lot of people that want to move on from Andrew Burnett. I get it. There's 7, 15, and 6. Like, it's hard for me to sit here and say, well, you're wrong. You're wrong. Like, right. I understand. It's a results-based business, and the results have not gone well. Like, I've told you, like, I think Andrew Burnett's a good coach. But I understand it's not going well for him right now. And at some point, if it doesn't turn around, then I think the Predators probably won't have a choice, right? Like, it eventually gets there. The question is, how much longer can this go on before it gets to that point. Like if you're the Predators and your strategy, which I agree with you, is to be as patient as possible and to try to get this thing to turn around, how long can you do that?
The huge question here that I don't know the answer to is, what do the players think?
Yeah.
Because obviously they're not performing. I mean, how much do they put on him?
Yeah.
How much is there? Like, I think there's some indications with some new guys that it hasn't been great, right?
Yeah. Well,
But
Jonathan Marchessault had some comments last week when they were in Montreal. Basically, look, I always struggle with this
in
because
French, I believe.
because it's in French, and when you get into the translation game, sometimes things get lost. So I always kind of make sure to point that out. But he did say, I go out there and I don't know who I'm playing with, basically shift to shift. Like he said that he was on line in warmups, and by the time the game started, he was playing with somebody else. Now, to a lot of people, that sounds like excuse making because you're paid to produce really no matter who you're with. But people did look at those comments last week by Marchessault and say, okay, well, that's on Brunette. Like, how can Brunette expect these guys to click when you're changing up the lines every second shift that they're out there? And, we've talked about that. Like, what's the balance of keeping the lines together, even when things aren't working, and letting them work through that, and also knowing when to pull the trigger and change things up, which we've seen a combination of both of those things this year.
Yeah. So, yeah, and it's a fair point on the translation, but it did seem a little bit like it wasn't blatant disrespect or calling them out, but it did seem like a little bit of a subtweet.
Yeah.
I
would agree.
And then, obviously the Stamkos thing.
Yeah.
So,
well, I mean, look, they've won 7 games in 28 games. There's going to be some frustration.
Right.
And I think you're starting to see some of that.
So when it comes to like the job question, first of all, are they past the point where it's like, we got to save the season? I mean,
wow.
I mean, the math says it's going to be real hard for them to get into the playoffs, but because that's part of why people do that sometimes is right. Like, okay, well, this is the last ditch Hail Mary to try to save this thing. These guys are all getting paid.
Right.
And it's supposed to be the most talented roster they've ever had, and it might be the worst team they've ever
Well,
had.
right now the math is not on their side at all. Like the math is really difficult for them to get out of this and get into the playoffs. Let's head back to our 102.5 The Game phone line. Welcome in Nate to the program. Nate, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
What's up, guys? Robby, you kind of stole my thunder. I was going to bring up the Marchessault quotes, which, well, you can say quotes, but we don't exactly know in English. It's just very concerning when you hear something like that from a player. Also, Alex Doherty had I think it was him, had an article the other day where he was talking about how Bill Haslam will handle things once he becomes majority owner. Like, will he be different with the GM and everything when it comes to letting go the GM and everything, or will we have the long run from like Poyle? So I don't think Andrew Brunette right now should be concerned, but just because of the track record of the organization with hiring and firing coaches. But I mean, I feel like he should be. And I feel like I'm a pretty level-headed guy now for with being a Preds fan. Totally, completely different with the balls. But y'all have a great day, guys.
Yep. Thanks for calling, Nate. Appreciate it. Well, look, as far as the GM stuff, we're going to have Alex on a little bit later in the show. Had an interesting piece at the Tennessean yesterday, where Sean Henry was kind of addressing some of this on behalf of Bill Haslam. And look, the sense that was conveyed in that article is the sense that I've gotten all along. Bill Haslam has a lot of trust in Barry Trotz, right? Now, how long does that last if things continue to go this way? I don't know. I mean, to Nate's last point there, 23 years with David Poyle being the general manager. I mean, look, simple math is going to tell you it's going to be hard to do that again at some point here in this organization. Like, you don't see 23-year runs as general manager. Like, Barry Trotz is not going to be the GM for 23 years here, I don't think.
No.
So, like, that's not a very common thing in sports. So I think it's naturally going to be different than that moving forward.
History overall tells you, and especially just the way things have changed, all that stuff, that they're probably going to go through a run where they have a GM for 4 or 5 years and then another GM and another regime. That's certainly possible moving forward.
Yeah. 615-737-1025, our phone number. A lot of your thoughts to get to. Brian Callahan, Andrew Burnett, both asked about their job statuses yesterday. We'll take more of your thoughts on that. What does it mean for the Titans and the Predators? Would they benefit for changes coming, or are they better off sticking it out with the pieces that they currently have in place? We'll take your thoughts on all that. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Hour number 2, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on this Tuesday morning. We'll have Alex Doherty from the Tennessean joining us at 8 o'clock. We'll get his thoughts on the Predators, on Andrew Burnett, all those things. So, Joe, we highlighted in the first hour. Brian Callahan asked about his job status yesterday. I think there is fair questions moving forward based on the performance of the team this year and, quite frankly, based on the owner and her decision-making in the past as to what's going to happen after this year with the powers that be with the Titans, whether that's Rand Carthon, Chad Brinker, Brian Callahan, you name it. I think all that's on the table. With the Predators, Andrew Burnett asked about his job status yesterday. They are 28 games into the year. They're 7-15-6, well below anybody's expectation as to what this could possibly have looked like so far this year. Playoffs look like a very, very remote possibility for them at this point. What does his future look like? A lot of that's the dominant talk right now in our city is what's going to happen with these two teams. Both of them very disappointing with the way things have gone to this point. Now, we could talk about Trotz in this discussion. We've gotten some questions about the Trotz part of this on the text line as well. I mean, if you want to talk about it, that's fine. My answer to that is I don't think that's even remotely on the scope of realism right now for the Predators. Like Barry Trotz, I don't think is going anywhere. So we can talk about it. I don't think Trotz is even anywhere close to this right now. And you can agree or disagree with that, but I think that's what it is as they look at it right now. So the general question I have for the Nashville sports fan right now is, and for us to kind of sit here and volley, are both of these teams on the verge of major changes? Should both of these teams be on the verge of major changes? Would both of them be better served sticking with what they have in place and having faith that at the end of this thing, they come out of it and they're able to figure things out? How do you kind of sort through where both of these teams are at? It's two different teams. It's two different situations. I get all that. But, Joe, as you look at kind of the state of pro sports right now in our city with these two teams, how do you view the decisions that are now in front of both of these franchises?
Yeah, obviously it's really bad right now. So, and you can throw Nashville SC in there if you want. So,
yep.
You know what, folks? Tennessee's in the playoff. There's a lot of Vanderbilt stuff that's going great. So, but the pro sports stuff, not good. It's very different. Yeah, I will take just one quick pushback a little bit on Trotz. I mean, we don't know what Bill Haslam is as an owner, right? It is different, right? I mean, it's going to be different. I think when it was more like a true just like ownership group and Poyle was in place, it was like there was no way.
Yeah,
he had total security, and again, he had earned it. I think through decades of overall good job performance. Had made then it started going bad, but it still was like,
I'm just saying, I don't get any sense at all that he's in any danger whatsoever.
Yeah, no, and I don't think, I agree, like right now, but I'm just saying, like, I guess maybe the way you said it sounded to me like it's just going to be exactly how it's been, and maybe you didn't mean that, but I don't know that. You know what I mean? Like, Bill Haslam could be a little bit quicker on the trigger on some things, right?
Sure,
it's possible.
Absolutely.
I know we'll talk to Alex Doherty. I mean, he had Sean Henry kind of conveying some of Bill Haslam. I hope Bill Haslam here and there will talk, just like we hope Amy Adams-Strunk will talk. I'd love to see these owners every once in a while.
Sure,
actually talk yourself would be a good thing. But look, it's different because Haslam. I think there's a lot of hope that it's going to be good. With him in charge. And the long term, and then on the Titan side right now, it's high alarm and concern with the way ownership has gone about business the last couple of years. So, but at the same time, the Titans can get out of things easier because in the NFL you can. I mean, you the NFL contractually with players, you have a much easier time changing things up, and in the NHL, you don't. You are, and right now we've talked about it. Say it again. Like the pain right now is bad, but like we already knew the pain was coming later on these contracts.
Right.
It's rough, man. Like you can project ahead with the Preds and be kind of, it looks kind of dismal. Now, maybe some of these young guys come up and some of these picks and all that are good eventually, but there's some pain here.
No doubt.
I don't think you can avoid.
Well, in particular, if that's what these new guys are. Like if this is like, I guess your way out of the pain is whether it's with Brunette or elsewhere, you figure out how to unlock these guys.
Yeah.
Like
these guys are actually good hockey players.
I'll
still.
again say, like, and you can put this on coaching, you can put it on wherever you want to. It's very difficult for me to believe, like, some level of drop off with Stamkos and Marchessault at their age after what they did last year. Okay, like I could see that. You know, Brady Shea, that one's a little weirder to me. I mean, he's 30. So, like, it's not like he's ancient out there. But, you know, one of the concerns with Shea was, all right, he's playing in Carolina. Carolina has been the best defensive team in the league for like the last 3-4 years. Their system is really good defensively. So is he a product of that? Well, maybe.
System guy.
Maybe so. I don't know. I'm just saying, like, it's difficult for them to believe that, like, there's this precipitous, big word, of a drop-off from all these guys all at the same time. Like, if that's what it is, then you're in serious trouble as you move forward, right? Like, your hope has to be that ain't what it is, and they're just having a hard time unlocking what these guys still have left in the tank.
It's like hitting the reverse lottery, you know? Like we talk about reverse Robby.
I mean, that
like,
would be tough.
It's like, how could it possibly happen like that? And then again, oh, wow, Philip Tomasino with another great play for the Penguins. And on and on and on. I mean, it is like for both of these teams, fans of both of these teams, at some point it is kind of like, my God, did someone like sell their soul here? Or like, what is going on?
Yeah. No, it's wild. And then on the Titan side of things, you're right. Like, you can get out of things easier. And this is the other benefit of drafting Levis where you did. It's not like it's Anthony Richardson. Like, you didn't draft him 4th overall. There's not a huge financial incentive along with the draft capital that you displayed to just keep him around. Like, if you're convinced at the end of this year that he's not your guy, like, you can have another quarterback next year if you really want to. Like, it's harder to find those answers with the hard cap in the NHL.
Right. So, but then also it's like, but Amy Adams Strunk is still the owner. So is that bad? Again, it wasn't long ago. That was a great thing. It was like, wow, she really gets it. And look at all the things she's done. And now she's got this team rolling and has got locked in with Robinson and Vrabel. And now it's like, what the heck is happening? So are you stuck there? Whereas, you know, again, you have to find out over time, like how things are going to be different under Bill Haslam. Right.
Right.
But, you know, someone made a point on the text line that I think is worthwhile if we were comparing coaches. Like Brunette, to me, including in the year in Florida, I mean, Brunette has demonstrated that he's a good coach.
I agree.
And I don't know that yet about Brian Callahan.
Right.
I don't think this year, I mean, some people are convinced this year has demonstrated about Brian Callahan as a bad coach. I wouldn't agree with that. I haven't been all that impressed. I mean, he obviously has not been able to help them overcome their limitations. Brunette has demonstrated he's a good coach. Also, though, this 28 games under Brunette is shockingly bad.
It's brutal.
And it's like, you know, the Titans, there are people who pick the Titans to win 5 games this year.
Right.
6 games this year.
You'd be hard-pressed to find somebody to pick the Predators to not have made the playoffs this year.
The underachieving under Brunette this year that's where it just throws everything out. It makes no sense at all.
So how do we balance all this? What's the path forward for both of these teams? Does it involve changes to the coaching staff? Does it involve changes in the front office? We'll take your thoughts on all that. 615-737-1025, our phone number. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, the game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. I got some tickets to give away to the TransPerfect Music City Bowl at Nissan Stadium on Monday, December 30th. Be caller 3-615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. You'll win a pair of tickets to the TransPerfect Music City Bowl at Nissan Stadium, Missouri and Iowa. Joe, I would be a big Iowa fan in that game.
Yeah, what about the SEC, man? SEC. The SEC is going to not schedule any more teams ever. Let's get behind the SEC.
Missouri could be playing a whole host of people that I will not root for Missouri in as long as that head coach is there.
So rank them
business.
again. Let's. I think it's a clear top two, but I'll throw Dabo in there. Rank them in terms of.
Dabo's a distant third.
Okay,
distant third.
So who wins between Beamer and Drinkwitz?
It really depends on the day. I think Drinkwitz. I think he's
really,
because he's just more of a. It's like, dude, shut up.
He's kind of smug.
Yeah.
Whereas Beamer is a little bit goofier.
He's kind of
more lovable.
He's your lovable loser.
I mean, I'm a big Beamer ball guy. So
I know you are.
As a Virginia Tech fan, I'm a Beamer ball guy all the way.
Yeah.
Shane, proud of you, buddy. Come to Virginia Tech, please.
Taking your thoughts.
Continue your father's legacy, please.
The Titans and the Preds, 615-737-1025. Jacob from Murfreesboro. I like Brunette. Think he's a good coach, but for whatever reason, his message and system is not resonating with this group of players. You got a team with multiple future Hall of Famers, and they're on track to be worse than the Preds expansion team. I think you need to make a coaching change, try and salvage something out of the season, and not let the negativity fester in that locker room all year. Now, the last part of that, I get, like the negativity festering. That would be where your question earlier comes into play. Like, what does the locker room think about Brunette? Like, we hear all the time, and I've heard this all weekend. He's lost the team. Like, he's lost the room. And what does that mean? Like, they're not playing well. Does them not playing well mean that he's quote unquote lost the room?
Yeah.
I think we go to that a little too often in the coaching part of this.
We do. And we go to like, they're playing for him. Are they?
Well, and by the way, like, I don't think you have to quote unquote lose the room to lose your job in the NHL either. Like Jim Montgomery didn't lose the room in Boston. He got fired.
They just made a change. Yeah. I mean, I know like Laviolette, I think there's some losing the room maybe that goes with him.
I would agree.
Right. By the way, they're getting booed.
Yeah, they are.
And he was like, yeah, I agree. These players suck tonight. I agree with the booing. But anyway, this also goes along with the whole, like, they're playing for, like that's what people said sometimes about Vrabel, like with the Titans. Like, the Titans are playing for Vrabel. So then, okay, so then they weren't when they started to sink, or did they have less good players?
Right.
And again, Vrabel's not blameless, but I'm just saying. Yeah, we get too much into that a little bit. I had an interesting comment, but the text line is this one. How about, this is then you get to the next step, which is, of course, okay, what's next? Noah from Adams from Clarksville says the thing that makes you more motivated for the Preds to move on from Bruno is having Carl Taylor in the palm of your hand with the Admirals. That's
I hear that all the time. I like Carl Taylor. Carl Taylor has done a good job with Milwaukee. We have no idea if Carl Taylor is a good coach in the National Hockey League.
Right.
I'm not saying he won't be.
He might be.
He might be.
Might not be.
But like, there is a huge difference between coaching in the AHL and coaching in the NHL. And again, he might end up being a great NHL coach. I have no idea. And I was talking about this yesterday. I also don't really know if he's the right fit for this team, right? Like, this is a veteran-laden team.
Yes.
You need buy-in from your veterans if you're going to make a change.
Like, to me, if you're going to make a change, it would be more for like getting a Jim Montgomery type coach, right?
Exactly.
For this group. And also, like with Carl Taylor, he's done a really good job, which means he should earn a chance to be in the NHL. But what you do in the AHL certainly does not mean you're going to have success in the NHL, right? Like, that's
first off, it's two different jobs, right? Like, you're
very different. You are supplying, you are in service of the NHL club.
The NHL club. Yeah.
And he's doing a good job.
He's done a good job. And again, he may be a great NHL coach. I don't know. Like, part of that's on like what does Barry Trotz think of Carl Taylor? I'm sure he's been really impressed with what he's seen from Taylor and what he's done in the NHL. But like, I think there's this assumption out there that, Taylor's done a great job in Milwaukee, so that means he'll absolutely be great in the NHL. And I can give you example after example after example after example of guys that were really good coaches in the minor leagues that it just didn't work in the NHL.
And eventually you'll earn your chance to show that in the NHL,
sure.
But we don't know. And I don't think that having him as like some motivator, right? Like, again, if you're going to do this, I think you have to get a proven winner, right?
I would think so. And there's a name that would come up there, but I'm interested to see if the Predators and or anybody else will go back down that road of Joel Quenneville. That name's been thrown my way a lot the last week, and I'm like, guys, I have no idea. I don't know. I am sure at some point somebody is going to hire him again, I think.
Probably.
But there's a lot of baggage with that one, man.
A lot of baggage. And it just, of course, you talk about the irony there, right? I think that would be irony. Of course, the reason Brunette got the opportunity in Florida, he's at Quenneville. It was certainly systematically, it would make sense.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's the same system. This is Quenneville's system. But, yeah, the baggage. I don't know.
A lot of baggage.
Steer clear of that.
William on the text line. I think the Preds should stay as they are. Yes, this year's bad. Train and get it together in the offseason, come back and knock our socks off. I'd be fine with the Titans being torn down and rebuilt. Get rid of everybody under Amy. This is from William on the text line. So William advocating for Preds to keep things as they are, Titans to totally tear it down.
Everybody, ticket office, PR.
That's low. That's
firing the whole crew. Just hire an all new organization.
Yeah.
I'm going back to, well, first of all, the whole thing with Brunette for me is it's just stunning that we could even get to that point, but we're at that point talking about it. I would hold off as long as I could. The Callahan firing after 1 year, independently, Callahan, I don't.
Just by himself. Like somebody brought that up with us yesterday of like firing Brian Callahan, but keeping the front office intact. I don't know how you could do that.
If that happens, then this front office has done a number on Amy.
Yeah. Like, I don't know. I don't even know how you could entertain that if you're Amy Adams Strunk. Now, again, I don't know that I necessarily agree with it. If the clean house argument, right? Could that happen at the end of the year and you just start over from scratch with Carthon and Brinker being out and Callahan goes with them? It would suck for Callahan. I mean, it would suck for all of them getting fired, but sometimes that's the name of the game in the NFL. So I'm not going to totally dismiss that as a possibility, even though I don't think Brian Callahan's getting fired after this year. But the idea of just firing Callahan alone and letting this front office come back, I think would be laughable if you're the Titans.
Yeah, it wouldn't compute at all. That wouldn't make any sense.
Let's head back to our 102.5 The Game phone line. Welcome in Adam in Portland. Adam, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Let me ask you something though, Robby. Do you ever feel through your years of fandom, do you ever feel connected or disconnected with the Packers? Like you get and when I say that, like you got a feeling when you go into a game, like, all right, my team's going to do this today. I think they're going to win here. I think they're going to lose here.
Sure.
Like that's a legit question because like I felt that with the Titans through the years. I'm so disconnected from this team. I never know what to expect with them. So the only thing that I've gotten right this year is I stand firmly in the belief that if you have a first-year head coach, you're supposed to suck. There's like weeks that are promising, but for the most part, it's not supposed to be good. And there's anomalies out there, but you're not supposed to be good. So if you change that, you're going to have another first-year head coach, and you're going to suck. So I would just rather wait it out at this point, man. Even if you come back with like 20 new starters, but your quarterback and your coach are the same, I think you got a head start on where you'd be if you started over. I don't know, dude. Like, I like him. I can see the passion. Coaches, I mean, when Wisenhunt was here, we were screaming to the top of our lungs, I wish this guy just gave a crap like we do. Like, that was a big problem. You could tell this guy cares, just things aren't working. But I got to go back to the first-year head coaches are supposed to suck.
Yeah,
that's the only way I'm getting through it.
Thanks for calling. Yeah. Well, the problem with that is, and there's different examples here. Now, look, Dan Quinn is technically a first-year head coach. He's been a head coach in the league before, right. So you can take that whatever you want to take it. But Washington's 8-6. Jim Harbaugh is first-year head coach. He's been in the league before. They're 8-5. Mike McDonald, first-year head coach in Seattle. He's got them leading that division right now. Last year, D'Amico Ryan, first-year head coach. They won the division. You know, by and large, I agree with what he's saying. Like, generally speaking, if you're a first-year head coach, you're taking over a team. It's not very good. Right. So you're starting from a place where it's difficult to be competitive immediately. But, I mean, you can point to several examples over the last few years where first-year head coaches have had some pretty good success.
And with the Titans, you had 9 and 7 for both Malarkey and Vrabel. So there's that too.
There's that. 615-737-1025. Our phone number. More of your thoughts to get to on the Titans and the Preds coming up next. Alex Doherty will be with us at 8 o'clock. All that ahead. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, the game. Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, the game, live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. We're taking your thoughts on the Titans and the Preds. Both coaches asked about their job status yesterday. What's the path forward for these teams? What is the right decisions that these franchises have to make to get themselves out of where they currently are, which is not very good? Taking your thoughts on that, 615-737-1025. Joe, to borrow a phrase from Jared, do you have a thought, or would you like to go to the phones?
Let's go to the phones.
Let's head to the phones. Let's go to our 1025 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com And welcome in David to the program. David, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, good morning, guys. Quick comment on the Preds. I think if you look back, several coaches, maybe even as far back as Barry, I think we have the same problem. And to me, I think it's our veteran players. I don't know if it's bad mojo in the locker room or what, but we continue to have good talent. I think we continue to have good coaching. So to me, the common factor here, I think, is our veteran players. And how in the heck do we get them to get out there and do their job? That's what's frustrating to me. So anyway, I'll hang up, listen to your comment. Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks, David.
Seems like they were good last year, or am I wrong about that?
That's what this kind of gets back into the captain discussion, right? Okay. So, look, if you want to point something out right now when they're 7-15-6, I'm all ears. Everything's on the table and for me in terms of potential solutions moving forward.
This year, I'd agree that the veteran players are a huge problem.
Yeah.
But it's not a consistent problem.
It's not. I don't think it's a consistent problem. And also, like, look, sometimes when you bring new people in, it shakes things up, and for whatever reason, they can't get on the same page. Is that happening here with them? I think clearly to some level. But it also didn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, I know Steven Stamkos is a winner. I mean, talk to anybody that's ever been around the guy. Same thing, Jonathan Marchessault. Like, has Jonathan Marchessault been like some big problem everywhere he's been? Pretty darn good in Vegas. Pretty darn effective in Vegas. Ryan O'Reilly, like Roman Josi. Like, you know, we get the captain discussion a lot with him, right? But we've gone through this. Like Roman Josi, I don't really think is all that different from the majority of captains in the league. Like, he leads by example. He's not a huge yeller and screamer. I don't think a lot of those guys really exist anymore in today's NHL. So, like, we can talk about the veteran players, like, but it just doesn't really add up to what they've displayed for the majority of their careers to this point.
I'm guessing some of the caller there is thinking back to like Johansson Duchesne.
Yeah.
Right. So like certainly there have been veterans. I mean, they have had, and again, it's kind of like, now, wow, Duchesne don't go great in Dallas, you know. There has been, again, it's amazing with both of these franchises. The comes here isn't as good, or at least it seems that way, right?
Yeah.
And then goes back out. Now, granted, like Julio Jones did not do well when he left.
Right.
He was
like
done.
there are examples of players that have played for both the Titans and the Preds over the last year or two that also go elsewhere and are not good.
Yes, that is true. Yes. But I am assuming so. There have been veteran issues, but like last year, Nyquist is a veteran who had his career year here.
Right.
So it's not consistent.
No. Well, I mean,
this year it's all bad.
Yeah, it's all bad. Like everything that could go wrong this year outside of like catastrophic injuries, which by the way, they're starting to get some injuries here. Carrier's week to week, O'Reilly's week to week. So that doesn't help as you're going through things tonight. Like everything's gone wrong. They got 7 wins in their first 28 games. Like, it's hard to do. And yet here they are. Kenny on the text line, going back to the Titans, says media use roster to excuse 2 bad years of Rabel.
This was going to be my rant. You just stole my rant.
Oh, sorry. You want me to stop?
That's fine. I can just rant about it now.
Okay.
The Rex rant starts now. Thank you.
Says he did no wrong. Best head coach ever. Now we're at it again 3 years later, excusing coaching for roster. At some point, roster is not an acceptable excuse. At least the GM is bad if we're at 3 years of the roster excuse. This is from Kenny on the text line. Which, by the way, Kenny, they have changed GMs during that period of time, by the way.
Yeah. So, first of all, it's Kenny G, which already triggers me, okay? I mean, I'm sorry, I hate Kenny G. Not this Kenny G, but I'm just saying, when I see Kenny G, I'm triggered. Yeah, so again, the media is – I don't understand the media excuse. Like, we excuse – I mean, the roster is the most important thing. I promise you, okay? It is the Jimmies and Joes over the X's and O's always and forever.
Yeah.
Always and forever, okay? You can give me your greatest coach in any sport, and then let's give them a crap roster. You know, there's the old saying, like, oh, you know, he'll take his and beat yours, and you take yours and beat his. That works to an extent, okay? I've seen Nick Saban, the greatest coach in college football history, with okay teams, and they went 6-6. I mean, that's what happens. And I've seen Nick Saban with the best players by far in the field almost every time out, and he wins almost every time out. So the roster, it's not an excuse. And it's part of the job. That's why I would pick also the greatest GM over the greatest coach. Let's talk about the Detroit Lions, okay? Because they keep coming into this discussion all year long with the Titans. And you don't want to be too fast, which I think there's some truth to, but I think there's also very different situations. I think Dan Campbell's a good coach.
Yeah.
I think Dan Campbell this year is destined to go for it on 4th and 19 from his own 7 and lose the Super Bowl. Like, that's what's going to happen.
Could happen.
But he's a good coach, and I love his postgame and stuff. They are great because Brad Holmes had insane drafts and signings.
Yeah.
That's why. And so the coach is taking advantage of that. So it's not an excuse. It is the most important thing by far, period. Kenny G.
Well, I think Campbell is also an outstanding fit just in terms of the mentality of what they work in concert well together. We make fun of the collaboration stuff a lot, but they're a pretty good example of when that can work at a pretty high level in Detroit right now. Right?
Yes. And I'm sure, again, like with anything with this, of course they talk to each other. So I'm sure Dan Campbell was probably like,
I want David Montgomery. Bring him in.
Right. Yeah. Or let's take Jahmyr Gibbs,
Right.
even though everybody will laugh at us for taking a running back in the first round. And that worked out pretty well. But again, that's also with Vrabel. We said at the time, Vrabel's going to be blameless for the roster. No, John Robinson was the GM who this roster, I can't give you the exact percentage, but it is still suffering from the end of the John Robinson era. You can't just divorce this whole situation from that.
Yeah, I would agree. Matt on the text line says, we saw something similar last year where it took a while for the Preds to adjust to Brunette's system, but they didn't do well in the playoffs, and now they're having to adjust again. Brunette should ditch his system and just let the boys play. They're pros. They know what to do. Well, you have to have a system. Huh? You can't just say,
boys,
fire wagon, baby. Just get out there and do whatever you want. Like, the system is not we talk about system. We make too much of system sometimes in hockey, which I think is true. You have to have.
You do have to have
system.
one, though.
Like, the reason for the system is so everybody knows where each other is going to be.
Right.
If you don't have that, it's hard to figure out where each other is going to be.
Yeah.
At any given time.
Yeah. You got to have a system. And I've also seen some today, as we've talked about before, but you take away the 20 game point streak, and what have they been under Burnett? Right. Again, the running back who runs for 150 yards, take away that 75-yard run. What did he really do? Right. Well, but he had the 75-yard run. So that's why he ended up with 150 yards.
Well, and it was, it was beyond the point streak last year too. Like, I think we just get caught up in, it was 16-0-2 and that was it. It was like, well, yeah, 16-0-2 happened, but they continued to play well leading into the playoffs beyond the 16-0-2.
They choked away that game at home. They were right there to beat the Vancouver Canucks in a playoff series. They didn't not play well in the playoffs.
Right.
Too many negatives. Sorry.
And I do think it's different than last year. We've talked about this. Last year, in some ways, I mean, you would want that again in terms of the start, because I think a lot of the slow start last year that they had in terms of the results was traced directly to the goaltender. Like, the goalie did not play well in the first half of the year last year, and then he did, and you started to win a lot. Like, it's not as cut and dry as that, but that's a big part of it. Like, Saros was under 900 for like half the season last year, and then he figured it out, and then you started to win a lot of games. This year, and you'd love for that to be the case right now. Oh, well, Don't worry. Saros is at 895 save percentage. Once he figures it out, we'll be fine. He's played great, and that's probably the more frustrating part of this, is he's played pretty well, and the offense is just nowhere to be found.
And now, nor is the power play.
Nor is the power play at the moment. 615-737-1025. Our phone number. The Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode coming up next. Alex Doherty from the Tennessean will be with us at 8 o'clock. All that ahead. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063 The Game.
Sometimes he wakes up on the wrong side of the bed. And sometimes he's just, well, Joe.
Awkward moment, let's do it.
This is the Rex Rant, now on Robby and Rexrode.
Generating buzz. So, like, 3 idiots in the front office are, like, coked up? Like, what kind of buzz are we talking about? I would have got away with it without you darn kids.
You hate to see it.
I assumed I didn't need to coach these guys.
Just
Just go out there and cover a punt. What's wrong with you?
It is that time of the day. Time for the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode. I hesitate to speak because Kokomo's on and I like this song. But Joe, the floor is yours.
Bringing me back to those mornings where you just really don't want to go to school. And then you hear this song on the radio and you feel way worse about your life. Thanks, Beach Boys. Sorry, I basically already did my rant, but actually Deagle on the YouTube chat has given me a new one. Thank you, Deagle. Let me read this one to you.
Okay.
Imagine how much smoother things would have been for a new head coach, new QB, and new team if we had kept / pursued Derrick Henry. Player leadership, offensive game planning, baseline of competency. And then there's back and forth. Like, yeah, and I do think that right now I think Derrick Henry was pretty resolved to move on, folks. The Titans could have, tried to give him an extension, before the season ended and things like that. The idea, and then he says Derrick himself said they didn't want him here. Well, Derrick talked about how they were going to trade him at one point, right? He talked about that on Buzzing with the Boys. I think Derrick Henry wants to win a championship and saw that he was not going to win a championship here. And by the way, Derrick Henry was on the team last year, I believe, right? Was he on the team?
He was on the team.
When they went 6-11, right?
He was on the team, yes.
Is Derrick Henry better than Tony Pollard? Yeah, Derrick Henry is going to be a Hall of Famer. Are we going to revise history on the Derrick Henry thing in terms of scheme and in terms of like what he wanted to do, and also fool ourselves into believing that Derrick Henry on this team makes that big of a difference? Yeah, he's better than Tony Pollard. And some things he doesn't do as well as Tony Pollard. They don't use Tony Pollard that much in the passing game anyway. Derrick Henry, this team, what is this team if they have Derrick Henry? Just replace Tony Pollard with Derrick Henry. Everything else is the same, Robby. These 3-10 Titans are.
I mean, they're not much different than 3-10 probably. Like, I guess my answer to that would be, like, does Derrick Henry break a run or two so far this year that Pollard hadn't been able to do? Like, does he spring one open where they score a touchdown in a game where that ends up being the difference? Like in Chicago, does he just blast one and they win that game despite the miracle flip, like, and the block punt? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but I think to your point, it's hard to imagine it being much different. Like, Derrick Henry was on the team. They did go 6-11. Maybe the Titans end up at 6-11 again this year. I don't know. They've got another game against Jacksonville in which they just lost.
So they're 9-28, right? I think that's right now. Now, since Robinson, I think they're 9-26.
Okay.
But remember, they lost two
games.
Yeah. They lost to the Bengals, they lost to the Eagles, and they fired Robinson.
Correct.
So they're 9-28 in their last 37 games.
That is correct.
Okay. So Derrick Henry, that means Derrick Henry, oh my God, I'm doing math in real time right now. So take away 3-10. So 6-18.
Yeah.
His last 24 games. He did not stop the Tennessee Titans from going 6-18 in his last 24. He's a great player.
Yeah.
He's a Hall of Famer. It's I know it's hard to watch him with the Ravens right now and all that stuff, but like, guys, that's not where we're looking here. It's the offensive line that wasn't fixed well enough. It's injured players coming in. It's the quarterback plays not good enough. It's a special teams coach who is just on an incredible run of brutal mistakes all year long, and on and on and on. They're not good enough in just about every area of a football team. And but you know where they are good enough? They're good enough at running back. Tony Pollard is good.
Yeah.
They're fine there. Spears hasn't been as good as hoped. Tony Pollard's been one of their best players this year.
Well, here's just some numbers on Henry real quick. So the last 3 years with the Titans, he averaged 4.3 yards a carry in 2021, 4.4 in 2022, and 4.2 last year. He ended up with 1,167 yards last year on 280 attempts. So 4.2 a carry. This year, he's at 240 attempts running the ball. He's at 1,400 yards. He's averaging 5.9 yards per carry, which, by the way, is his best of his career.
Well, that's insane.
It's an unbelievable.
5.9 is insane.
It's an insane number. So what does that tell you? Does it tell you that, like, Derrick Henry is like, maybe it does. Like, has he worked on his body and he's just in the best shape he's ever been in? And this is like peak level Derrick Henry? Maybe. Or does it tell you that the situation around him the last few years, when you want to factor in scheme, the offensive line, all that stuff, was just bad? And now that he's in a place where it's good, he's taking full advantage of that.
Yes.
Like, would he be averaging 5.9 yards per carry here? The history the last 3 years suggests that would not even be close to the case.
Not at all. So he's great. He's never not been great. He's a place where we talk. I mean,
I will say
we
did talk about the idea of him losing a half step or so. That doesn't appear to be the case.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's true. That's true. The half step, the couple plays this year, like, and that's the hard part about the last couple of years. So few opportunities. He had a few where he got caught. No, he's not markedly better. He's in a much better situation. And by the way, Tony Pollard, who is at 937 and 4.4 a carry, is going to end up exceeding Derrick Henry's rush total from last year with the Titans. Again, not saying he's better than him. Not saying you wouldn't rather have Derrick Henry, but that's pretty close to the last place I'm looking.
615-737-1025, our phone number. Alex Doherty from the Tennessean will be with us coming up next. We'll get into the Predators, the Andrew Brunette conversation with him as well. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Final hour, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keys are here with you on this Tuesday morning. The Nashville Predators in action tonight, taking on Calgary. Preds have lost 7 in a row. And Andrew Burnett, as we've discussed all show long, asked about his job status yesterday. The asker of said question and the author of a very interesting piece at Tennessean.com joins us now on the program. We head to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHunted.com. Welcome in Alex Doherty from the Tennessean to the show. Alex, good morning. How are you?
I'm great. Always happy to be on with Robby and Rexrode.
Yes,
absolutely. Or Rexrode.
Really, any way you want to take it.
That's right. That's right. Versatile.
Very versatile, depending on who you ask around the country.
I'm doing great. How are y'all?
We're doing great, man. Appreciate you taking time to be with us. So let's start on the Brunette front. Yeah, you had an interesting piece yesterday at Tennessean.com speaking with Sean Henry about kind of where things stand now. Obviously, the team is well below expectations, 7, 15, and 6. You asked Brunette about his job status yesterday and kind of his thoughts on that. What do you make of where things currently stand with the Predators, with Andrew Brunette, and whether or not there could be a decision coming on that front?
Yeah, it was interesting. I think it was clear, like you guys said, about I think he was definitely ready for the question. I don't think he's not living under a rock. He knows the situation. And I want to give a quick shout out to my fellow columnist here at the Tennessean, Gentry Estes, who put something out Sunday night that I think captures the idea here. Like there is not there's very little that this team can do beyond addressing the head coach situation because of how they've structured this whole retooling. I mean, they can't trade any of these players that have no trade clauses unless it's a situation where the player wants out and would be willing to waive them. They've already made some changes to the role players side, and obviously Tomasino out and Dante Faber out, and you've got Svechkov in there. But like those guys were never going to be the ones to turn the season around. It's always going to be around the players, finding a way to make this happen. And so it's just like it's inevitable. Like everyone is going to start saying, like, do they need to make a change at coach? If you go back to when John Hines was sort of on the hot seat with the Predators, it was a similar situation. He had obviously a lot more time. He was here for longer at the time, but I thought it was more of a product of the players were not playing to their expectation, especially guys like Matt Duchene and Ryan Johansson at the time. It's not dissimilar, except it's just way worse. And now you have the situation where you've spent all this money and you had all these expectations, and now you're on pace for a sub 60-point season, which would be the worst season ever. So I think the Brunette situation is, I think that the time to do it would be right now, right? I mean, I think all of us were kind of prepared for, like, after they came back from this road trip, that if they were going to do it, then that was going to be the time. And then they haven't done it, and it sounds like he's going to be there today, and then they go on another quick road trip, and then they're back home for a while. Like, if they were to be the same kind of bad team for the next few days and lose some more games, if they don't do it now, like, then they're not going to do it at all this season. I mean, it's not going to do any good to fire him when you are completely out of it, right? I mean, it's just, it's a really careful situation. I think Trotz is probably going to be loyal to his guy. He did a pretty good job last year. He has a good track record in the NHL. It's really just a really frustrating situation all across the board.
Yeah. So you mentioned Trotz. So, when you look at the whole picture, you could probably make the case, and some people have today here on our text line, that why aren't more people mad at Trotz? Again, every time we bring this up, I know we raise our hand, and just like I think most people in this town, and say, and we were basically throwing a parade with these moves. But as you look back, Alex, and now that you've seen 28 games of this team, are there some things that he should have considered that maybe he didn't? Or is this as simple as it's just shocking how some of these guys appear to have fallen off a cliff?
I think there's sort of maybe you're starting to see, like, there's a reason why teams don't spend $100 million in one day on free agency. I think that's part of it. Like it's just in the NHL, there's free agency is not the answer. Like, I don't watch the NBA, but I would imagine the NBA is a little different. Like, you spend a gobs of money on one guy that can change your team, but and NFL is kind of different too. But in the NHL, like, you have to draft and you have to develop players over a long period of time, and that's how you become good. That's how teams win Stanley Cups. Is they draft and develop players over a long period of time, and then they have one or two superstars that help carry the way. Free agency where you just go out and sign a bunch of 30-year-olds, it just doesn't typically tend to work. So maybe he's just like learning that that's the way this works, and he needed to do this in order to satisfy the urge. Like, hey, if I just go out, when I'm in charge, I'll go out and spend a bunch of money and show him that that's how you can win. Maybe that's not it. And he got a taste of it the previous summer when he signed Ryan O'Reilly and Luke Shen and Gus Nyquist. But then now it's like maybe this will set the stage for the rest of Trotz's tenure, that he got burned before. He knows that you can't just spend $100 million and fix all your problems by throwing money at them. And now he knows that he had to actually experience it in order for it to come true.
So I brought up your conversation at the Tennessean with Sean Henry, kind of speaking on behalf of Bill Haslam. What's your sense for where Haslam and the organization currently stand on the Brunette and the Trotz front right now?
Yeah, in putting that together, what I wanted to do is I wanted to get an idea of what kind of owner is Bill Haslam going to be, right? I think we have some ideas about what it could be. I mean, when we found out that he's going to be the majority owner, 2022, I think everyone kind of assumed, like, okay, I think he's probably going to be a more active owner than previous ownership for this team. But is he going to be like a Jerry Jones, like involved in the daily activities, really it? And so I wanted to answer that question, like how involved is he? And I think the answer is he's going to be more involved for sure than the previous ownership with, where the Herb Fritch was majority owner and there were a lot of other minority owners, and there's still going to be minority owners, but I think he's going to be more involved. I think he wants it to be a partnership between him and Trotz. And I think that's what's happened. Like when I talked to Sean Henry, who, if anyone who doesn't know, like that's how the Predators for years have wanted this to work. There's a proxy for the owners, Sean Henry, who kind of speaks for them. So it's different than, say, the Titans, where you could potentially talk to Amy Adams Strunk directly.
Really?
I assume that's how it works. You don't talk to her every day, Joe? You don't have conversations?
Mostly
with her every day?
texting. Mostly texting.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I figured. Yeah.
TikTok.
But Sean Henry's a perfect, I think, a really good person to talk to in this situation, because he is part of that group, right? So I think that, as best I understand, Haslam is a huge fan of Trotz. He trusts Barry Trotz to be able to figure this out, and I don't think there's any like regret at all about any of the signings this summer, any of the decisions Trotz has made, especially the fact that Trotz has been able to do all this without sacrificing into the future. That has been brought up many times. Like the fact that they've held on to draft picks, they've held on to prospects. They haven't sacrificed it. It's not like they traded 2 first-round picks to get Steven Stamkos, right? And now it's not working. They spent money. And as I understand it, and this is a quote that Sean Henry had, they're never going to let a bank account get in the way. Like there's no, it's not a bottomless pit of money, but it's sort of like spend whatever you want. This is not an issue of like, we need to be tight with the purse strings now. Like, I think Bill Haslam is just totally fine with spend whatever you need to do to make the team better. That's the vibe that I get in terms of the Haslam Trotz partnership right now.
Okay, quick aside question before I ask you a hockey question. So on this Haslam, because I'm sure you requested Bill Haslam, do you feel like this is how it's going to be? I guess I was kind of hoping that since there really is an owner, that there would be some, and what Robby said it earlier. I mean, he used to deal, he was a governor. He has dealt with media extensively. Do you feel like this is how it's going to be, that he's not going to really engage in that with media?
That's the vibe I get. Yeah, I think that's how it's going to be. I think you're probably going to go. Sean Henry will speak for the ownership group, and in some way. I mean, I I don't know for sure, but I would imagine that Haslam will occasionally have some availability, but it probably won't be about team stuff. It'll probably be about, larger organization, like business decision stuff, like those kind of things. Like, I don't think you're going to be able to to pull a meeting and say, Bill, what do you think about this, this draft class coming up? I can't see that happening.
Yeah. Well, we need an Amy and Bill, weekly presser, a joint presser. We'll see if we can get those going moving forward. So,
well, at least the Predators don't have like 3 presidents or whatever the Titans have. Like a confusing mesh of different bureaucracy. Like, you got to talk to this vice president and then this guy. I don't know how it works. I just listen to your station a lot, and I hear a lot of complaining about that. So
yeah, well, there's a lot of complaining about everything right now.
There is,
rightfully so. So on the hockey front, Al, what's the way out of this? If there's something that you could see that's actually realistic, like a realistic way for this team to score at all, is there any hope in what you're seeing day to day from this hockey team right now?
Okay, so I have liked Steven Stamkos as the number 1 center with Phil Forsberg. They have not scored yet. that has not. It's only been there for a couple games, but I think there's something there. I think there's a little bit of a chemistry between like Stamkos and Forsberg, and maybe Nyquist as a unit that could potentially find something. If you remember last year, they were a 1-line team with O'Reilly and Forsberg and Nyquist, and they had nothing after that. And then this year they tried to have like a 3-line team where they were going to have Stamkos going, and they were going to have O'Reilly going, and Forsberg, and they were going to have this other kid line with Evangelista, and obviously none of it worked. So now they're just like, okay, well, we got to find a line that does something. Like, we need one line that can find some sort of offense. I think that's kind of what is the idea. Like, find one line that that makes the other team nervous, right? That when they're out there, they have to be ready. And I think that has to be the Stamkos, Forsberg, Nyquist line right now. And then the other ones just tread water until they can win a few games and gain some confidence. I mean, that's where they are right now. They have got to find any foothold out of this. And the only way to do that is just like find confidence anywhere you can. Like, if you get a power play goal tonight, that's huge. If you get 2 even strength goals, then you're rolling, right? I mean, that would be monumental for this team. So it's going to be just incremental change and incremental, like, small steps here and there that just slowly they can build their way back into it.
Well, Alex, great stuff, man. Really appreciate you taking time to be with us today on the program, and we will talk to you soon.
Absolutely. See you later. Thanks.
Next time we'll talk Milwaukee sports.
Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say there was a lot of Carl Taylor talk earlier today that I did not appreciate. So I can't stand for negativity around Carl Taylor. So we're gonna have to address that later.
And Giannis too. Giannis's usage. There's a lot of stuff we can get into.
Brewers.
Yeah, that's right. Brewers off-season moves. Yeah, we love Milwaukee sports.
The Brewers. I can't believe the Brewers didn't sign Soto. I was really hoping that
they were in there. I think, right? They were close.
Go Pack, go.
They were about $700 million off.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks, Alex. Appreciate you, man. Alex Doherty from Tennessee and our guest on Robby and Rexrode. We'll react to what he had to say. Take more of your thoughts on the Titans and the Preds. 615-737-1025. Robby and Rexrode. 1025-1063 The Game.
So I think the Brunette situation is, I think that the time to do it would be right now, right? I mean, I think all of us were kind of prepared for, like, after they came back from this road trip, that if they were going to do it, then that was going to be the time. And then they haven't done it, and it sounds like he's going to be there today. And then they go on another quick road trip, and then they're back home for a while. Like, if they don't, I mean, if they were to be the same kind of bad team for the next few days and lose some more games, if they don't do it now, like, then they're not going to do it at all this season. I mean, it's not going to do any good to fire him when you are completely out of it, right? I mean, it's just, it's a really careful situation. I think Trotz is probably going to be loyal to his guy. He obviously did a pretty good job last year. He has a good track record in the NHL. It's really just a really frustrating situation all across the board.
That was Alex Doherty from the Tennessean on with us. Appreciate his time in the last segment, taking your thoughts on the Pred. 615-737-1025. Let's head back to our 1025 The Game phone line. Welcome in Bob in Antioch. Bob, good morning. Thanks for calling in.
Good morning, guys. Over the weekend, I saw a report out of Canada that Marcia Show was complaining about Brunette constantly running out different lines. He said he didn't know from shift to shift basically who he would be with. And then I also saw somewhere that at the game where Stamkos, made the comments afterwards that supposedly between periods there was a fight in the locker room. Have you gotten any inkling of locker room unrest? I was just curious.
Yeah, thanks for calling. I've not seen anything to that effect on the Stamkos thing. Now, maybe I've just missed it, but I've not seen anything on a locker room fight. So
Bob and Antioch bringing some info.
Yeah, I don't think that's
perhaps.
I don't think I don't think there's been a locker room fight. Now, Luke Evangelista and Michael McCarron got into it in practice a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
so
they're friends now.
there is that, but they're all good. All good. On the Marchessault thing, we brought that up a little bit earlier. So, they're in Montreal last week. I think the interview was in French. So sometimes, like, the tone of these things when you're translating gets lost. Now, having said that, like, he did say that, shift to shift, didn't really know who he's playing with. He brought up the example in this interview of, starting on a line in warm-ups one time, and by the time the game came around, he's on a different line. So, I mean, you can translate that all you want. That's what he said. So, look, there's some we've talked about this. Brunette has not been shy about changing lines quickly, right? Is that the right approach all the time? I don't know. Like, he's even talked about that. He's talked after the game multiple times this year of when he's asked about changing lines. Is it the right move all the time? Probably not. But I just got to go with my gut, has basically been his response. So I'm sure that there have been line combinations so far this year that he has not left together long enough. I think in other cases, he's left some guys together too long, right? Like, they keep trotting Tommy Novak back out there on occasion with Stamkos and Marchessault, and it just has not come close to working all year. Like, it just doesn't work. So, like, quite frankly, I don't know that I want to see that trio together again this year. So that is a tough balance as a head coach. We had the same conversations about Laviolette back in the day too. Like, how long is too long to leave a line together, and how much do you have to give room for letting the chemistry grow on that line? It's a hard needle to thread sometimes.
Sometimes I have thought he changes a lot,
I would agree.
But like you said, you just laid it out there. It's not always the case. And, when you're losing, then you're whatever you do is wrong.
Right.
It's just not, whatever they're trying isn't working, obviously. So that's not great. As far as Marchessault and those comments, how important are those? How significant? Je ne sais pas. Thank you. No, I mean, there's some clear frustration expressed there, right? Yeah. I didn't think it was like an attack, but it was expressing some frustration. Stamkos seemed to express some frustration the night Bob's talking about, this fight thing, just spitballing, but sometimes people yell at each other, and then people later say it was a fight.
Which, by the way, I am sure that has happened this
Absolutely.
year. I
hope so.
Yossi told us this year, told us yesterday. He was asked basically, in years past, you guys have had the closed door meetings and things like that. And he's like, has anything like that happened this year? And his response was like, oh yeah, we've had a lot of meetings this year, a lot of talking about things. so far.
Yeah,
So
when you're this bad in sports, and it becomes more like a corporate culture. You got a bunch of meetings and TPS reports and stuff like that.
I have no
sucks.
doubt that there have probably been some instances where they've gotten after each other a little bit, which, by the way, I don't think is always a bad thing. I think
sometimes you have to.
Sometimes you got to do that, and quite frankly, the mature teams, which this one should be, with all the veteran players they have, can handle that. And sometimes you end up better for it. Now, the ending up better for it has not happened to this point, and that's really the question right now of what we've been trying to nail home all day. How do you fix it? Like, is it as simple as firing Andrew Burnett and bringing somebody else in, and that's going to have to be the solution? If it continues this way, that's probably going to happen at some point. When that point is, I don't know. Have you reached that point already if you're the Predators? Doesn't look like it. I think they're being as patient as they can possibly be with hopes that he eventually turns this thing around.
What if they continue this season at basically the same pace of one of the worst teams in the league, and Barry Trotz says, well, I believe in Andrew Burnett as a coach, and he's going to be my coach? Well, what then?
I think that's going to be a tough sell.
It's a tough sell.
I mean, just being honest, if it continues this way and they're this bad all year, and you're talking about a top 5 pick at the end of this, I mean, it's the NHL. I think it's going to be a really tough sell with this group after this year. I think it'd be hard to do.
Yeah, it would. It would be. I don't know about unprecedented, but it would definitely be against the grain in the NHL, big time
against the grain.
But look, just throwing it out there as Trotz kind of beats to his own drum a little bit.
He does,
and this is his guy. And the thing is, if that does happen again, I don't know that Trotz would care, but publicly at some point, then the anger starts to shift to him.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, look, if it continues like this, I mean, the anger is going to be there with everybody at the end of the year, right? Like, if they're this bad the whole year, well, then it's like right now it's a this year thing. It's like, man, they're 7-15-6, and this is a far cry from what we thought this year could be. But if it's like this the whole year, then it becomes, oh my God, well, what are they going to be next year? Like, how do you get out of this if you're them?
Then you start just looking at, okay, is there a particular year here where being the number 1 pick is really great?
Right.
Because you got a chance.
Look, if people,
you got a few bites of the apple.
Well, people have asked me about this James Hagan kid who was supposed to go number 1 overall this year. I'm not gonna sit here and lie to you. Like, I've not spent any time looking at next year's draft class for the National Hockey League. I haven't allowed myself to do that yet. But who knows?
I mean, I just very on the surface here. The buzz for him is not like generational.
No,
Connor Bedard like buzz.
Not that I've gathered. No.
Yeah.
So
again, that one year, everybody was like, "Oh, they could get Lafreniere." He's good.
He's fine. Yeah,
it's pretty good.
Yeah.
By the way, he loves playing for Laviolette.
Bedard hadn't been great this year either.
Yeah.
What does it all mean?
Well, it's Chicago and Nashville are just battling to be the worst team in the NHL right now. Absolute dogfight.
Brian Callahan addressing his job status yesterday as well. We'll get into that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. By the way, appreciate all of you. A lot of people weighing in today on this discussion of the two local professional sports teams, so we appreciate that. Brian Callahan addressing his job status yesterday at his weekly Monday press conference was asked by Paul Kuharsky pretty much in the early part of the press conference there about his future and whether or not he has a future with the Tennessee Titans. Here's what Brian Callahan had to say on that front.
You feel certain there is a future
Oh, what do you mean?
for you?
Oh, yeah, I don't worry about that stuff. That's not for me to worry about. I do everything every day to do my job the best way I possibly can. I put everything into this as much as there's nobody that thinks about how to build this program and what we need to do more than I do. And so, yeah, I don't worry myself with anything other than that at this point. And again, there's things that I can't control. And so I don't focus on that. I focus on what it's going to take to build a program that and build the foundation to a program that's going to allow us to have success in the future. That's my only focus. That's the only thing I think about.
Do you think you're going to take your dying breath tonight? Oh, Kaharski, man. Oh, God.
Are you certain you have a future?
That was well handled by Callahan there. Well handled. They just get, sometimes Kaharski.
I mean, he was direct. I like that.
It was very direct. Very direct.
Callahan. What?
Huh? What do you mean? Oh, that's what you mean? Okay. Yeah. Let me give you the answer I was going to give.
Look, it's a good question.
Here's the answer I was going to give to a more normal question. Like, do you feel like you're coaching for your job? How much time you got left, Callie?
Well, we have the answer to that question, too. He was asked whether or not he was coaching for his job. Nick Suss of the Tennessean throwing it out there that, look, a lot of coaches this time of year say, I'm always coaching for my job. But is that the approach that Brian Callahan is taking with this one? Here's what Brian Callahan had to say.
This time of year, we hear coaches all the time say, I'm coaching for my job every week. Is that your attitude? Is that productive to you, or is that something that you don't?
I don't think about that part of it. I wouldn't say I'm coaching for my job. I'm trying to do the very best I can at every possible moment of the week, of the day, to put ourselves in position to be a successful football team and to win football games. The rest of it's sort of not outside of that. I don't control any of that. I just work as hard as I possibly can. I pour everything into this that I have and do the very best that I can possibly do on a day-to-day basis. And that's all I really think about. And those things that come up, that a lot of that's outside. And I don't really have much control over that either way. So I just try to do the best I can every day.
So that was Brian Callahan on that front. So what did you make of Callahan's answer to questions about his job status yesterday, of which there were multiple?
Good answers, right answers, saying the right things. And look, I've thought this all along. It's not just saying the right things because you're coach speaking everybody to death. I think he's been open and honest, and in terms of the front facing aspect of this job and how he handles all that, I think he does a great job. I think seriously, if I could take a little wand and take that trait from him and then just touch all the other coaches in the NFL with it, it'd be what a wonderful place this world would be.
Yeah.
We just tell us what you really think. I never think Brian Callahan is BSing us. If he is, he's an incredible BSer, but I think he's honest, forthright, and he handles all that well. The question, of course, is how good is he as a coach? And yeah, this season has brought that into question. It's fair, the bigger issue is the roster doesn't mean that you take everything off the coach. So I do think, Robby, we've talked about these March or so comments in French.
Yeah.
En français. There's something that for the other day that Jeff Simmons said in the locker room, which I think is maybe a little bit of a crack here in the foundation, which is, I hate seeing, I'm paraphrasing, but I hate seeing our QB on the ground. He had a little quote that was essentially ripping the offensive line, which we've all been doing for months and actually for years. But still, it's a little bit of a change,
no doubt.
Right? Now, Jeff Simmons has had some comments after games where it's like maybe not quite taking responsibility or not quite living in reality. But that one is a little bit of a shot across the bow of one side of the ball to the other. And so
he basically said he's tired of seeing his quarterback getting his block knocked off.
Which, again, like I'm with him.
Yeah.
We're all with him. But does that make this a little bit more of a challenge here moving forward this week, the rest of the season? It's a huge month for Brian Callahan in terms of like you
got to manage this thing.
Got to manage this thing. I think that they have played, quote unquote, played for him. But I mean, they've played hard. They're not good, but can you keep it together and be competitive and win a game or two? I think it's important for him.
I do too. And look, I've said this before, and I'm not going to change it now. Like, you don't get credit in professional sports for me for playing hard. Like, that's part of what comes with it. You're paid handsomely to do this profession. You know, for a lot of these guys, look, a lot of these guys will be back next year. Their contract dictates that they'll be back, so it is what it is there. A lot of these guys, you don't know. Like, you're playing for your future in the league. You're playing for jobs moving forward. So that should be the minimum of the expectation, is you playing hard. I understand you're 3-10, and there is a difference between playing hard and knowing that you're playing for something as a team. It's a different thing in the NFL. I recognize that. But like Callahan, can you keep this thing where it feels like you're steering towards something? Or does it just get totally out of control by the wayside down the stretch here? Because I think that's a big part of this. Like, your ability to keep this thing on track is going to be part of the evaluation at the end of the year.
Right. Effort is way overblown. I mean, was it Robert telling us that maybe Derrick Henry's effort wasn't there on some of his, where he lost a step because he didn't want to be here. So I got a touchdown. I'm going to slow down now. I mean, like, truly.
I've been running a long way. Got out of breath.
Now, granted, I continually get smashed in the head by 8 guys in the box, but now that I have a touchdown in front of me, you know what? I'm just not caring. I'm going to slow down a little bit. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Effort is an incredibly overblown thing, but here's where effort isn't. Effort in preparation.
Yep.
And that's what leads to winning. So how they perform and execute what the coaches are trying to put together as a game plan. I'd love to see Cole Anderson's game plans, but how they execute, how they prepare, how they play on Sunday. It's not me. When you get out there and if you don't have effort, you're going to get killed. You're going to have effort. And that's what this game is. But do you care to win? Are you sticking together during the week and preparing and doing what you have to do to win? That's what we find out on Sunday.
Well, Brian Callahan said that yesterday. Like, he addressed the team and told them that his expectation is to go out and play hard and to be able to put yourself in a position to win these games. And one thing he also said was, like, if you don't do that, that kind of tells me a little bit about your competitive makeup and what you are as a player, which I would agree with. Like, I think that is absolutely something to monitor for the coaching staff as they move ahead here. Now, here's the other thing. I think Brian Callahan did a good job of answering all those questions. I've talked about it. It's difficult for me to really totally get behind moving on from a head coach this quickly. Like, I've not been impressed with Callahan. They're 3-10. I thought he called a heck of a game in Houston, but it's been few and far between, just in terms of like you coming away from a game and saying, yeah, I felt like that was a really, really well-coached football team in that game. I'm also like, I'm not willing to just totally dismiss the idea that he could be a good head coach in this league moving forward. Really, the question, though, is, and he doesn't know the answer to this, I don't know the answer to this, you don't know the answer to this, nobody does. What's Amy Adams-Strunk thinking? I mean, the history would tell you that if you're just absolutely convinced that this whole thing's coming back next year or that he's coming back next year, that's a mistake to me. Like, I'm not convinced of that. I think it's probably likely that Callahan's back here next year, but based on what she's done the last couple of years here, I'm not convinced of anything that she may or may not do moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, rash decisions have been made, so more could be made. Rash decisions have been made, so decisions that at some point maybe do become obvious aren't made because of that. I think either way is possible.
Yeah.
I have no idea. LD has an interesting point here. Possible it's a good thing Jeff Simmons said that he's supposed to be the overall leader of the team. Seems to me speaking out on something that you want to see corrected would be good. I hear what you're saying. is he the overall leader of the team? I mean, he is as PK has pointed out, he is the guy that, Derrick Henry's gone. I mean, Jeff Simmons is kind of like the quote unquote face of the team. And your face of the team, Taylor Lewan, is gone too, by the way. Face of the team for when he was a bad player and the captain ripped off his jersey. But anyway,
face of the franchise.
Yeah, face of the franchise. But I think maybe that's true. Can they have honest conversations about it? I just like if I'm on the other side of the ball, I don't like something like that airing out through media, right? We're seeing some of this stuff with the Eagles right now and like AJ Brown and Jalen Hurts and stuff. So if it's aired out in person and in the media and everybody's on the same page, that's one thing. But if it's just aired out like this, that can
cause problems.
That can cause some fissures. And again, I just don't know that Jeff Simmons is the overall leader of the team. I have my questions about that.
Well, and he might be by default right now, which is another part of this that they've got to address as they move forward here. To your last point, like if you're not having those conversations in the locker room and you're just airing it out in the media, that can become a problem. Like we've been toggling back and forth between the Titans and Preds all show long. Like last year, I'll give you an example. Like Barry Trotz got on Stillman's show last year and basically just laid the entire Tyson Berry saga out for everybody, right? Like he came, requested a trade. We're pretty disappointed with him requesting a trade, but now we're going to figure this thing out. Like in some ways he kind of called him out, but then he, later in the interview, he's like, yeah, we've had this entire conversation with me and Tyson Berry. So like, I do think when you have it and the understanding of, I'm talking about this publicly, we've already had this talk, it's a little bit different than just flying off at the media and AJ Brown talking about what's wrong with the Eagles right now? Passing. We cannot pass the football.
Well, not to be fair, AJ probably did go to the sideline and said, your passing sucks.
He
And then
did.
said, they may have talked about
Hey,
it.
Jalen, you know how to throw the ball?
Throw it to me.
Yeah. Good stuff going on in Philadelphia.
There's just a lot of stuff today. Great participation, including we have suggestions of, let's see, we have Mike Fisher and Eddie George's head coach suggestions today.
I've seen that.
Not sure the level of seriousness. Now, one of those, I mean, Eddie George someday could, like, if he wants to be an NFL coach, I could see that.
Probably not.
The other one, I mean, what? But apparently he was joking, right?
I think so.
Okay. We'll take you at your word that you were joking about Mike Fisher as the head coach of the Preds.
615-737-1025, our phone number. Final thoughts on the Titans and the Preds coming up next. A lot of your thoughts to get to on our text line. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063 The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. We'll continue to take your thoughts on the Titans and the Preds. It is time for Preds Pick to Click here on Robby and Rexrode. Be the first caller, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. If you guess a goal scorer for the Preds tonight, you win a pair of tickets to a future Nashville Predators home game. We'll get to that here in just a few minutes. Joe, a couple of final thoughts to get to on the text line. One texter saying, did we get duped by Callahan? He hasn't had the Titans on the tracks at any point this season. Highly doubtful that he'll be able to do so. If anything, we were duped by him in the offseason. We learned he's a fraud. Talks about how the quarterbacks that he worked with coming in here and how those guys were simply good quarterbacks, and doubts very seriously that Callahan had any much to do with their development.
Hey, everything you said is possible, right? It's possible. It's certainly the quarterback. I always looked at the quarterback history of Brian Callahan not as, I mean, come on, no one thought he like helped Peyton Manning get good. Peyton Manning was on the twilight. He got to work with him. I don't think anyone, at least I wasn't trying to give him credit. Now, the one guy you would be Joe Burrow, right? I think it's fair to give Callahan some credit there, or keep open the possibility. Burrow came in as a rookie. He worked with him. He's a great player. Burrow, is still a great player without him. But, I mean, that's all fine. Circumstantially, he's had great quarterbacks. To me, that's just he's been able to be around great quarterbacks, so he knows what it looks like. He knows what works, what doesn't with certain guys, right? Is he a fraud? Maybe. Maybe he's a fraud. Maybe he's a bad football coach, Robby, and we're seeing that, and he's going to be relegated to, being a college offensive analyst soon enough, right? But do you feel confident right now in saying that based on what we've seen?
No. I mean, look, Callahan has not – it's not like I'm walking away from this season so far and being like, yeah, I feel great about Brian Callahan moving forward here. I also just don't know that I'm willing to totally pin it on him as to why they're this bad. Like, is he the main problem that they have? It's hard for me to get there. After everything that's gone on the last 2 years around here.
Yeah. My blame pie it's the biggest piece of the blame pie goes to the roster, which of course goes to the front office.
Yeah. Which, like, I put this out there. Like, if the season ended today, I'd move on from the front office. My opinion on that hasn't changed. And at this point, probably is not going to change. Like, they're 3-10. They're going to end up bad. I don't know how bad. I don't know if they're going to be picking 6th in the draft or 3rd in the draft or 10th in the draft or what it's going to look like, but they're going to be bad. And I've just not seen a lot from this front office that convinces me that they can solve this moving forward. It is time for Preds Pick to Click. Preds in action tonight, taking on the Calgary Flames. Puck drops 7 o'clock, pregame 6 o'clock here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. No change in the standings last time out. Joe Rexrode in first place with 5 correct answers. The listeners, Nick Keyser, myself, with 2 correct answers on the season. Not a ton of goals to speak of right now.
Remind me again, are we allowed to say nobody? And that counts?
Yes.
You've done it before. Why are you asking?
I don't remember if it actually it can, or if it's just you're protesting.
I would put it to you this way. You're allowed to say it. If you want to win tickets to the game, you're going to have to give me a goal score.
But
listeners.
But us.
Yeah, if you want to do it, knock yourself out.
That's my vote today.
Still, I know that it's happened 5 times this year. It's still statistically the most unlikely option.
That's why, I got a big lead. I got a big lead, so I'm trying to motivate the Preds.
You do. Let's head to our 102.5 The Game phone line. Welcome in John. John, thanks for calling in. Who is your pick to click for the Nashville Predators?
Let's go with Forsberg tonight.
Going with Philip Forsberg. Thank you, John. Appreciate the call. Does feel like Forsberg's due. I think he's got 1 goal in his last 12. I think it's 12. So need him to start putting the puck in the back of the net. I'm up next in this competition. I'm going to take a leap of faith here, Joe. They were working on the power play yesterday. I think it pays off in a goal tonight. Jonathan Marchessault. He's talking the media in French. Tonight he's scoring goals in English. Forsberg off the board. Marchessault off the board. Joe Rexrode, your pick to click for the Predators.
Oui. That would be good for the Preds. Yeah, I'm going no one. My pick is no one. They're going to get shut out.
Okay.
Listen to these words and be motivated, Preds. Offensive waterfall.
So you're trying, you're
incoming.
Pushing for 7 goals here.
Yeah.
Turn this thing around.
Maybe this will do it. If it happens, you know why.
Forsberg, Marchessault, No one. The selection by Joe Rexrode. Nick Keyser, your pick to click.
For the
National
second time
Predators.
this year, I'll take Steven Stamkos.
Only the second time? You
Yeah.
taking him?
Yep.
Wow. Well, it hadn't worked with Rexrode, so maybe it works with you. Although Rexrode is leading this competition by a significant margin.
Yeah, I don't even know how.
Thanks to PK.
Well, PK did get you one.
That's right. PK got me one. Yeah.
I mean, PK, I think is 1 for 2 in Pred's pick to click selection.
That's fine. If I don't win by at least 2, then I won't accept the victory. Okay.
Thank you. Forsberg, Marchessault, no one, and Steven Stamkos, the selections in the competition today. Really appreciate you guys and your participation on the program this morning. A lot of thoughts on Andrew Brunette and the Predators. A lot of thoughts on Brian Callahan and the Titans, and we'll be back to discuss it all tomorrow.
Real quick, Dustin from Hopkinsville said they need to schedule something at the Sphere for the Preds for like Cher or Yoko Ono and cancel it. Comparing Cher or Yoko Ono to U2, one of the greatest rock bands of all time, I'm offended, Dustin from Hopkinsville.
Wouldn't hurt maybe to find a concert somewhere. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I'm sure they can find something.
See how it goes. That does it for us today. Jason Big Joe is coming up next. You're listening to 102.5, 106.3, The Game.
Have a great day, guys. Enjoy the sunshine.